This is Earth Soul Medicine, a space for spirituality, connection, and next-level nourishment. Let's see what comes up in this space today. Hello, this is Earth Soul Medicine. I'm your host, Samantha, and today I'm back with Chelsea.
Hello, world. How's it going? I don't know how to start.
Yes, me neither. When I was introducing my mom, I'm like, this is awkward. This is Amy, my mom. And then we just bust out laughing.
I loved listening to you guys. You have the most adorable, similar vocal mannerisms. And it's so fun to listen to you guys just rap back and forth because when you really get passionate, I couldn't even tell which one of you was which. For you would meld into a common voice. Awesome. It was so beautiful. Oh, man. I loved listening to you guys.
It's so funny, too, because while she was here, she was talking about how there'd be instances where she would hear herself and be like, oh, I sound like my mom. And I was like, yeah, that happens to me all the time. But more of my mom would say it that way. So yeah, the similar vocal stuff is very funny.
I can only imagine how much you would get that straight through the maternal line. I don't have my mom in my adult life, so I haven't experienced that, but I definitely hear my dad in me.
Yeah.
But I think you'd really, when you have the same, I don't know, there's something about what you share with women in your family that is unique.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Because the maternal line is so influential, because I guess you wouldn't have been here without your dad either, but I don't know, something about being inside of your mom's body is a whole thing. For so long, too. And then her body fed you for so long. I mean, I didn't get that. My mom didn't breastfeed, which is actually pretty tragic. I look back and I'm like, oh, I wish I could have had that for myself. And I'm happy I'm able to give that to my child now.
Right.
Do you know if you were breastfed?
I was breastfed. Yes. I don't know any great stories about it, but yeah, I definitely got a nice natural start like that as much as possible, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah. My dad recently, well, I guess maybe not. What is time, really?
Yeah.
Somewhat recently unearthed this file of photos of my mom when she was in her pregnancy with me and attending natural childbirth classes at the Takelma Community Clinic in its early iterations.
Oh, man.
It's so beautiful.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's pretty cool.
I feel like I can envision the way that picture looks. Wow. Do you ever miss your mom as an adult?
Oh, man. Yeah. Although now that it's 20 plus years since she died, it's the missing is an interesting word for it, right? Thinking of how you miss someone right when they die. I just in the last 10 days lost my dog, who I've had for 14 years. So I'm feeling fresh grief at the moment too. And thinking about how I miss my little dog is missing who, while she's a dog, was a member of my family for 14 years, right? So
yeah,
the missing changes, the way you miss someone changes, but also I lost her at a prime time in my life, right? I was 13 when my mom passed pretty suddenly. And so that is probably the main source of most of my wounding and healing in my adult journey. I just saw something recently that said, or heard somebody say that when you're in your 30s, you're reliving and experiencing what you truly loved when you were 13, but you were ashamed to love it. And you were trying to be cool. So you weren't really your authentic self probably, because you're just wading through puberty and trying to be socially adept. And it's not very smooth at that age, or at least it wasn't for me. And yeah, that hit me hard thinking about who I would have been when I was 13, and also how much I can't even remember who I was when I was 13, because that year of my life was the year I lost my mom. And so that is all a pretty tender area.
Yeah. Did you stop school?
No, actually, I've been processing that precise question a lot lately. Funny you should answer that. I chose to go to school the next day after my mom died, which was the first brick I put up on the wall around my heart to protect myself. But it's funny because I didn't see this at all as a 13-year-old, but obviously I've, tried to look back at that moment in my life, and there's pictures of me from that day at school. I'm wearing like a black, I look like a tough, like out of Grease Lightning or something, like this black tank top, and I put on like a rose tattoo on my upper arm. Like I was trying to like project this very like tough, I'm fine kind of exterior. And decades later, like a therapist, a really amazing therapist, helped me kind of understand how being such an empath and not knowing at all what that meant as a teenager was a difficult road to walk in losing my mom in a community that knew me well, because as well as processing my own grief, I felt, everyone else missing my mom too. And that would be like a lot for me to handle. So my response was like, I'm good. I'm fine. I'm going to school the next day. Yeah. I'm awesome. I'm good. I can Chelsea's great. She can handle it. No, she's fine. No, it's fine. Really, I'm fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's been that, I'm an amazing people pleaser. I learned some great coping strategies through all of that now I'm working to unravel and find, there's beautiful gifts and wisdom gifts and all of that. Like I wouldn't change any of it if I had the opportunity. I would not be anywhere near the person I am without those experiences.
Yeah.
But also it's given me a lot to look at to really get to know who I actually am, and how to just carry all of that with peace.
Yeah, I like that. How to carry that with peace. Because it's true, like people always talk about releasing things, and I kind of understand that, but also we don't like lose these parts of ourselves or these like challenges we've been through. It's more of a like, I release it from the box I put it in so that I can feel it and so that it can integrate within me. Whereas I used to think like I can just take this chunk and I can put it down and it doesn't affect me anymore. And that I find to be not the case. So carrying it with peace.
Yeah. I'm processing so much right now. I'm just kind of speechless for a moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think that's really like the better option, right? Because to try to put it down, I don't know, maybe there's healthy ways to do that, but to me that ends up just being an escape. Like,
yes.
And I really resonated with a piece of your conversation you had with your mom talking about like the very fine line between intentionally distracting yourself for something from a moment that's like more than you can process in that precise moment in time, and also then the necessity to go back to it, because otherwise you end up in this world of just escaping or building up walls to things and never addressing them. And yeah, I think my experience, and maybe we touched on this in another conversation, is just like everything's a spiral, right? It's like you're gonna come back around to these. You're gonna have, if you don't learn how to carry something with peace, you're going to experience it in another manifestation or a different archetype, right? Like the lessons, I really think we came to this life knowing what we're signing up for. Like I don't think I could ever say this in this lifetime, like, I would choose for my mom to die when I'm 13. That sounds like a great reality, but like, I do think my soul knew what I was signing up for, and that I needed to have that experience for some god-awful reason to learn what I needed to learn. And, I spent like about 17 years just stuffing that down hard. And I mean, what I thought I was like healing from it. And also I really wasn't. I just was like building up this, how I really visualize it is like this concrete wall around my heart that just kind of kept a distance between me and the world to kind of protect me. And until I learned to like break down that wall, like sit with that pain, go back to 13-year-old Chelsea, like be with her, talk to her, like look at pictures of her and like help her heal through that time of her life. You know, that's just a spiral I'm going to walk for my whole life. And
Right.
whatever that lesson is, you know, everyone's got some version of their wounding or their pain, and you just keep experiencing different versions of it until you learn to carry it with peace.
Yeah. Like after all that time, you become a master of that pain or that specific wounding, you know? And like that's what this life was for, becoming a master of that.
Yeah, I really could boil down like so many little threads of my, you know, spiritual journey or healing any wounding I have. All of it comes so deeply around to a point around mothering. We were talking the last time we talked about how I want to be in the mommy club.
Yeah.
Hearing myself say that in public was like, it's funny because we started off you saying, are you cool with talking about your spirituality? And I'm like, yeah, no problem. But then I'm like, God, I told everybody I want to be in the mommy club. That's like so vulnerable to me. And now I talk about it again. Obviously, I want to work through this, you know? Like, I love that. I have a lot of stuff up around the mother wound, and also, you know, that expresses through me too in the work I do. Like mother love is like
Right.
my religion. Nurturing children is my jam. I think about nothing but child development and trying to be the best person I can be so that I can guide children, which at this point is other people's children. And, you know, in some corner of my mind, that's like all practice for how I will someday be able to give that to my baby.
Yes. So are you guys like planning on having a baby someday soon?
Yes, we've been holding that goal dear for years now. It's been being two women makes baby making a whole different journey than for anyone living a heteronormative experience.
Yeah.
And actually, we did get pregnant at one point. I had a miscarriage more than a year ago now, which makes it not so tender to talk about.
Okay.
And actually, I should start like, if you want to back it up and insert a trigger warning.
Sure.
Trigger warning on the
Yes.
topic of miscarriage. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have been able to say that out loud or to the public if we'd talked about it a year ago or, you know, but I also have come to feel really strongly about being able to share that experience because I had no idea how common it was and what a possibility that is. Like it just, you know, I had my sight set on getting pregnant. And as soon as I was like, woo, all right, that's it.
It's over.
Done. You know? And then it was a short pregnancy. It was only a month later that I miscarried. But it felt, you know, like a lot longer than the couple of weeks I was aware of that. And
that's heartbreaking.
That was a tough moment in my life. Our life.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine. Luckily, I've never had a miscarriage, but I know a lot of women who experience that.
I read a statistic when I was, you know, doing my research afterwards, trying to understand what happened to me, that it's like can be as common as 1 in 4 pregnancies. And we don't know about it because it does happen so early. And because, you know, this is like why we don't talk about it until a certain point in our pregnancies. And also why it's so hard, you know, you haven't told anybody yet. And then you don't want to tell everybody. And then you're, you know, I was like a really dark moment in my life that I couldn't tell anybody why all of a sudden I was just showing up at, you know, 30% of myself. Like barely functioning in life and not really wanting to be the transparent person I normally am about what goes on in my world. So, you know, for that reason, it's helped me want to talk about it because if someone else was experiencing that, I would just want to help normalize that experience. And, you know, I know for me, expectation is like the devil of my life. You know, like every single situation of my life, I hold this expectation that's what ends up getting me in the long run. Like that's where the heartbreak happens, is where I don't have my expectations set realistically. And I don't want anyone to, expect that that's going to happen. But I also don't want it to come so far out of left field that you just, I don't know. It's a tough topic.
It's so tough. And I feel that because when I was pregnant with Pepper, I was so excited. I was like, I want to tell everybody I know, and then it was my mother-in-law who was like, well, don't tell everybody yet. And I was like, why not, crazy lady? What do you mean? And then is when I found out that like so many miscarriages happen. And then I thought to myself, wow, pregnancy and birth and carrying to term and having a healthy child is such a miracle. And I was like, whoa, that's like a big deal.
It really is. Human development is so fascinating. I love teaching the topic of prenatal development in my college classes because it is just miraculous. Like the number of cells that are growing per second, it's just like, it really is a miracle. Life is so fragile. It's incredible that we all turn out to be these humans with bodies that work, to some varying degree.
Yeah. Yes.
It's just really...
and that there's so many of us on Earth. It's like, whoa, we are so overpopulated, but wow, look at us beating the odds and living. And even Malcolm the other day was like talking about the statistics of children before like modern medicine who died under the age of 4. And I was really trying to I don't know why, maybe I'm a masochist, but I was like trying to put myself in the shoes of a mom who would have lost their kid at that age.
Right.
And I'm just like, wow, I would be not okay. Very much not okay. And then it's like you have, your 3 other children you still have to take care of.
Dude. I can't imagine holding that level of grief and trying to find peace and what it would take to put on the happy face you needed to get through your day with your other kids. That's it. Yeah. Oof.
Yeah, I watch Bridgerton. Okay, it's a guilty pleasure. I really like that show. But they have an example of that. Oh no, they don't, because it was her husband who died. It wasn't her child, or was it? Somebody died and it was terrible. And that's what that reminded me of, like the visuals of that, and the actor portraying what that would be like. Mm-hmm. And it was very dramatic.
I've been reading/listening to The Mist of Avalon, and I love historical fiction. And same thing, I was kind of like putting myself in that emotional scape, imagining what that would be like, because they're referencing like, in the medieval times,
right? Yeah,
some sort of prehistory. How common it would be to like lose an infant under 1, right? Yeah. That so many babies wouldn't survive their first year, or like they're all royalty in that storyline. So they're like giving their babies to nursemaids and talking about, if they have a healthy nursemaid, they'll survive their first year or whatever, right? Just like, but thinking about how it would have been like normal to expect that your baby might not make it the first year, like mind blowing how. Yeah, like you said, how there are so many of us, how we've shifted that reality.
To like living very long lives, comparatively. And then to like know when you conceive and you've made it to term, like all of that trauma your body has been through, that this baby might not survive.
It's so wild.
Wow. It does seem medieval.
The timeline too is trippy, like thinking, in one of part of that, the main character's like 20 years old and thinking herself an old woman and almost past childbearing age, you know, and here I am like about to turn 37, like thinking I'm going to get pregnant at some point here in the next couple years, you know, like
Yes.
my mom had me when she was 36 and my brother when she was 38.
Oh.
My wife was born when her mom was 40. I think my dad was born when his mom was 40 plus, like 2 maybe.
What?
And I like hold that dearly, you know, like I'm not buying, well, I have let myself go down this road, but not anymore. I'm not buying into this geriatric pregnancy crap after 35,
Oh my God,
you know,
I'm
like
so glad you brought
not
that
a
up.
thing. We're not like, that's just BS. I'm not buying into. I'm
and
not
can we
gonna
not call it
think
that?
about that anymore. Yeah,
Yeah.
the branding is absolutely the worst ever.
Geriatric? It's like I'm getting a hip replacement. Like, what is
WTF.
this? Yeah. Yes, I was talking to some other ladies about this too, and they're like, I'm not comfortable with that. And then I'm like, I know so many women who have healthy pregnancies, and it's like, it's way more common now. So that's why it's fascinating to hear that your dad's mom had him at 40, because that was a
In
long
the
time
50s.
ago.
Yeah.
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 That was uncommon then.
My family has long generations between us. Like you and your mom were talking about how your mom is in her 50s, right?
Yes.
My dad and my mom, if my mom was alive, they'd be in their 70s. They are. My dad isn't. I don't know how to do the tenses. Dear God. Sorry, Dad. My parents would be in their 70s, are in their 70s. I still can't get it right. Edit this
Yeah.
part out. Good Lord.
Yes.
You know what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And yeah, my grandparents were born in the 20s and 30s.
Wow. That's
It's wild.
fascinating.
It's so interesting how that shifts the way your family story moves through time. I don't know why that, like, like I said, I'm a nerd for historical fiction. I love just like thinking about trying to imagine what my ancestors were doing and
Yes. I've got
how they how they got where they went and just what happened to make it so that I ended up here. Like all those
Yes.
miracle pregnancies and childbirths, like so freaking many of them, right? For you and me to end up here with in this other podcast I like, Medicine Stories. Amber Magnolia Hill is always talking about this concept of how for every generation you go back, you know, like you have 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8, 16, you know, like your ancestry multiplies exponentially. All of those people had to get all the things right and have this miracle of human development and childbirth. And just like, it's so miraculous.
It is. It's like the evolution of them. You are an evolution of all of these people. That it really drives it home for me that we're all connected, you know, and that we're all one.
Yeah.
It's also crazy to think about, too, because my dad never knew his dad. And he was adopted by the man who married his mom and then was given his last name. So I don't even know I don't know how to track down that lineage on that side.
Right.
And so I've spent most of my time, and we talked about the maternal line. It just has a bigger tug on me. I feel that. But yeah, digging into my maternal line has been very interesting. And there was a lot of like Irish and indigenous intermarrying in that line when the Irish came to America. And that's as far as I've gotten. Because it's a long road back, you know? But I was also like, wow, that feels very significant to me to like explore that. And
it's interesting how you bridge that gap in how it influences geology, or not. Did I say geology? Yeah. Genealogy. Like thinking about stones and rocks too much today, obviously. Thinking about genealogy and how that storyline, how that thread could get lost in like an adoption or a name change situation is kind of fascinating. We've talked about that a lot in my partnership because we're 2 women. My if I bear a baby from my body, it will not have the genetics of my partner unless we went to scientific lengths that we're not interested in.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge guiding reason why we chose to, when we got married, I took her last name, because that way our future baby would have my genes but her name, and that was like the way we could conceptualize having both of us in that story.
Union. Yeah. Before I met Malcolm, I was in a long-term relationship with a woman, and we often talked about how that would work, like what we would do and how we would both be a part of it. Mm-hmm. And her idea, which I was like, at the time I was so against, but she was like, wanted to do some of the scientific stuff. Like, what if it's my egg with the donor sperm and you carry the baby? So that way it's me and it's you. And I was like, no way. I was like, I want this kid to have my genes, you know? So that was a big question mark.
Yeah. There's a lot of options. And I mean, science can do cool things like that. It would be so cool if it could be a genetic, you know, when you're in love with someone, you really there's like this desire to create something of the both of you that is like, you know, it's not up to me that the person I fell in love with doesn't make sperm. Yeah. Like, I love that person regardless, so I'm not going to go too far down that road. But nonetheless, you know, it is a challenge. And I also just, like, I can't involve too much science in my baby making. It just doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah.
And although I'm fascinated by it. I mean, if there was if it wasn't so invasive to go down that road,
yes,
it's a cool concept, but
yeah, it's invasive and it's very expensive, and like, you know, hormonal treatments and stuff are not good for you. They're just not good for you. And I was telling you earlier about how I was thinking about twins. I've just had twins on the brain, and so I was looking up, because we don't have twins in my family at all. And Malcolm's like, we're not gonna have twins. Nobody we know has ever had twins. And I was like, well, let's consult the Google machine. And so I was like Googling it, and twins aren't directly linked to like ancestral lines. Fraternal twins are not. And so, God, I hope I'm getting that right. I'm like, I read this one time, but the AI compiled information for me and told me that you're more likely to have twins over the age, or between the ages of 30 and 40, if you conceive and give birth between then, if you've had them in your family before, or if you've done IVF. And it made me think about all those shows where it was like Kate plus 8, where she like gave birth to 8 kids, and you're like, wow, how does that happen? And you're like, oh, you pump yourself full of hormones, so you release 8 eggs at the same time. And then I was like, ooh, I don't know about carrying 8 children and then birthing them all.
Dude.
And then having to feed them all milk.
The tax on your body is just, wow.
It seems unnatural.
Totally unnatural. I mean, no judgment if that's the road you went down, but like, that's
You know, and I think that was purposeful. She wanted 8 kids. So she was like, you know, pump me full of all the stuff. I want 8 kids. But I know people who struggle with fertility, and that's the option, right? It comes down to, because you try everything before you get there, and you're like, okay, well, this is the option now. I'm going to attempt to do these treatments and get pregnant.
Right.
And it's helped a lot of people get pregnant. So I'm just thankful I've never had to do that. I remember going to the chiropractor when I was pregnant with Pepper, and he and his wife had 6 kids. And I was complaining or something. I was like on the table, and I was like complaining about my pregnancy and talking about how quick and sudden it was, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to have a baby. And then he started sharing their experience after the 4th one of having trouble conceiving. And it really put it in perspective to me again with the whole miracle of birth. And then I was like, wow, okay, I'm having this baby for a reason. Like, I need to get on board.
Right. It seems like I have the privilege of working with a lot of families who are in their childbearing years, and
Yeah.
babies do come for a reason. Boy, they really like. It's all, you know, like we've been saying, it's such a miracle. That stuff is so like worked out on a level beyond our understanding.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
All the souls just doing their magic up there, and.
Yeah.
I
And
don't know.
You said how you think you sign up for what you get when you come. I certainly believe that, even for all the bad things and all the, you know, perceivably good things too, like having the child. But then you're like, I don't want to F this kid up. You know, like I really got to give it my best. I really got to heal it, clean it up so my kid doesn't have to deal with that.
It's an amazing motivator to think about trying
Or
to
catalyst.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. It felt like having a kid was a catalyst for my own healing because I was shoving it down. I was building walls. I'm like, no, pain, no thanks. Pain, go away. Don't ever come back. Don't come back any day. Yeah, but then like I think it wasn't like I was looking at her as a baby. I'm like, oh, I need to heal myself. Like, you know, I want to do the best I can. It was like, I'm heavily triggered. You know, like there are things coming up here that are ugly. It's not a pretty, beautiful time with my baby. And it's not because of her. It's because of me.
Right.
And so it wasn't particularly a good time. But I think that's how it happens a lot of the time. Like the quote unquote rock bottom or whatever. But I
Right.
don't think having a child was my rock bottom. But certainly a catalyst for change.
Yeah, I can't imagine any more powerful change in your life
Yeah.
than becoming a parent.
Yeah.
I like to think that I will know what I'm doing when I'm a parent because I work with children so much, but I haven't
like
done
you
the
have a good foundation.
I mean, I've got a pretty strong foundation, but but also I've like, you know, spent years working on the hairy eyeball. The whole like giving them the look that means no, for real, put it down right now. Like we're not kidding here. You know. Also, it fails all the time, so I'm no master of it. But I've practiced for lots of years before I actually had the baby, which most people can't claim. But I also, you know, I haven't had to fight the bedtime routine or the toothbrushing, or
Right.
I've never had to buy someone shoes every year as they keep growing out of them, or like I get to, you know, I get to sleep in. I could go on, and all the parents will just be.
But also the fact that you know, like the fact that you know you got to buy shoes every year, it's like you're ahead of the curve.
There's that.
Because I had no, you know, I didn't have experience with kids. I wasn't connected to an extended family. So I didn't have like people around me having babies. My mom had a baby when I was 8. So I did get some of that. But I don't remember a lot. You know,
Right.
I think you're so egocentric as a child. So you're not really
Totally.
aware of all the things that
Yeah.
are happening around you.
Your perception of the world is very different than through the adult lens.
Yes.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah. There was something, but I lost it.
Well, I love that because I've been thinking a lot about like motherhood and also loss lately. Just like in meditation or, you know, like during a card pull or whatever. I'm just like feeling that theme right now. So I find it interesting that those are the things that came up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we didn't plan those questions or whatever.
Right.
It's just what came up. And I've been thinking a lot about loss specifically. And like how afraid I am to lose certain things. You know, like I'll be like losing a loved one. you know, and like how I want to hold on, where I'm like, no, I want to control the loss. Like, let's lose something else. Let's not lose this.
Mm-hmm.
And like that resistance to that. And I pulled a card. And it was like the sickle or something. I had pulled out of my Green Witch card deck. And it had, as the descriptor, loss, but also change. And I was like, isn't that what it is? Like, it's a loss, but it's a change.
That's totally what it is. That's, I haven't been getting this one a lot lately, but there was a moment in my life where all the time the card I would pull would be around, I don't know if I will even say it right because I mostly read it, but the goddess Kali, Kali, Kali. And hold on, I'm pulling out last time we did this, we pulled a card right before we started, right? And
Yeah.
so I brought the cards this time just in case we wanted to do that again, but I didn't. But but a card in that deck is the transformation card, which is death, release, surrender, the goddess Kali. And it's all about how you have to allow something within to die so that something new can grow, right? And man, is that one of just like the hardest things to do, is just to release into.
Yes. Make space for something. It's like you're chipping all the old stuff off. And you're like, wow, I was really comfortable with all that old crusty stuff all over me. And now it's like a bare feeling. It's like a vulnerability, like, and it's like fresh new skin or something. And you're like, wow, I don't want to mess that up. So yeah, but you're right, because the loss creates the space for something new. And so then now I'm like, loss may have been the initial message. And then I think once I pulled that card, I was like, okay, well, there's a shift of perspective that needs to happen here. Like, it's not just a loss, right? It's a balance. We live in duality. It's a potential for something new, too. And, like, focusing on that positive aspect of the coin, like, positive side of the coin, is going to get me more of what I want.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Whereas often I'm maybe I choose, but I tend to pivot towards the shadow. Mm-hmm. You know? Like, I don't want that. Biting your fingernails, you know?
And you need to know it, know the shadow, like be willing to look at it and hold it, but also it's tough not to get stuck there sometimes, right? That's one thing conscious discipline has shifted immensely in my life. That idea of focusing on what you want, that's what you get more of, like that curriculum taught me. When I first read this, I thought it must be total BS. I was like, whatever, that's a wildly unrealistic claim. It said that when you're upset about something, you're always focused on what you don't want. And I was like, yeah, right. And I tested that theory, and it turned out to be 100% true in my life, that like anytime I'm not glowingly happy, it's because I'm focused on what I don't want. Instead, once I pivot towards what I do want, that manifests itself, and it's just wild how much of that is up to us having that wise mind consciousness moment like we talked about before. It's so crazy.
Yes.
But also, it's not like the only good part about it. Like you have to have the awareness of the dark. You do have to sit with peace in the crap for a minute to get the light out of it. Like, I get amazing insight and solace on so many pain points and tough situations in my life when I take it to my altar and face the four directions and turn through the wheel of the year and like try to imagine, like, okay, whatever this situation is, like, what in this is east? Like, what is a new beginning, and what is like fresh about this? Okay, now I turn it to the south and I think of like, how does this reflect like the passion of my life, like the hot, sweaty, hardworking time, like having the world be on fire all around you, which I've lived through. And now that brings like a whole new understanding to South energy for me since Slater Fire, and then turn it to the West and like think about the wisdom and the water. And then really like where it always just like hits me deep and I feel the chills is like when I turn to the North and I think about like what part of this is, or like how can I gain wisdom from this being like a ending, a death, like throwing all this in the compost pile and letting it decay so that something beautiful can grow, because then ta-da, you turn back towards the east, like new beginning, spiral around again, and like from this total crap moment, something beautiful will grow. I maybe can't see it when I'm in the dark, when I'm like steaming in the compost pile. It's not clear to me what seeds will be planted from that, but I've experienced it enough times to know that they will, like something.
Yes.
And that helps me just like, I feel like I just keep coming around to this phrase again and again, just like sit with that, whatever that pain is, like hold that with peace and then keep moving forward little by little and just try to take care of myself along the way.
Yeah, little by little, because I often want to speed that time up. Like even if and I think I'm sure a lot of people do that too. It's because it's tough to sit in the pain or like the grumpiness, whatever it is. And to be like, I want that to change now. Like I want to make that change now. And the whole like quantum physics thing of like you can make change now, it just takes a thought or whatever. And I'm like, yes, there's truth to that, but there also is like a taking of time that is needed.
Yeah, I've been working on that idea of taking time because like I started off by saying my dog just died and I was like really grieving that I still am. It's pretty fresh, but the immediate day preceding it was a really hard day for me, and I had taken one day off of work when we needed to put her down and then planned to go back to work the next day, which triggered 13-year-old Chelsea really hard of like, no, just put on your happy face and go to school the next day. It'll be fine, and instead chose to cancel school, which I've never done before, and just take a day to just sit with it and just take that time for myself, which is like not something I've often done through hard moments in my life. I'm always just like, no, I got to keep going. No, I still got to go to, no, I'm a teacher. People depend on me. I got to just go do the thing, right. Put on the mask and make it happen. You can cry your tears when you get home, Chelsea. Yeah. And that's just not helpful to me. You got to take a beat sometimes I've really shifted that belief in myself and noticed an amazing difference. It's so wild how sometimes like if you just give yourself the space, you something that is incredibly painful, it's not painful if you're in your little, if you're taking your space for yourself. Like it, this happens to me emotionally and physically. Like if I'm really, really sad about something, or like if I got my period and I'm really, really crampy, if I just am at home and, sitting in the sun with my journal and drinking some tea and relaxed, I feel fine. I could be so deep in grief, or I could be like so, in just like my most moony moment. And I'm just like, I'm at peace if I'm at home. But if I say, no, you have to go, you made an appointment with someone, like suck it up, go out to the world and do your thing. I would be like, I'm like all of a sudden super anxious, or I'm like, I'm super crampy all of a sudden when I wasn't before, or, like pain's radiating through my body with every step, that the second I get home and put my feet up, that it just disappears, like when I've stopped and learned how to listen to my body and like honor that, it's revolutionized my life, like that I can just, it's like an on-off switch to pain, emotional or physical, if you're truly taking care of yourself. I think we were talking about something like this and how it relates to trauma, and how like something that is, when a trauma happens, what really affects us, like we perceive the way it is. Oh, I get my words. Edit. back up. When we have something traumatic happen in our life, it's about the way we perceive it, right? It's not the trauma that happened. It's how it was traumatic to us, you know? And I think like when you take space after you've had something traumatic happen and really allow yourself to process it, it doesn't really turn out to be that traumatic in your life. Whereas if you're like, nope, nothing really happened, you're fine, keep going, suck it up, we're all big kids here, put on your big girl panties and let's keep going. Then years later, that trauma is still bubbling up and bugging at you.
Yeah.
Because you got to give it the space it deserves.
I was just talking about this with a psychologist the other day, and we were discussing EMDR treatments, which is this revolutionary trauma.
I experienced that once. It was amazing.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I want to know your experience. I'm going to ask you about that in just a second.
Go on with what you're saying.
But we were talking about that, and she was like, this gives you the opportunity to process the trauma you weren't processing. And she was explaining how when you don't allow yourself to process, that's what happens, is you're stuck in the trauma. And she was like, a lot of people or everyone processes their trauma as you sleep as well. And that's why sleep is such a huge component of care after a traumatic event. And then she was like, that's why they give police or firefighters or people in the military the day off if something bad happens. And I sat with that for a while and I was like, not during wartime. Like you don't just like have to murder someone and then get the day off, right? You're sleeping in a friggin' hole for like a week straight.
No wonder we all see so much PTSD.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Veteran-related PTSD. And I'm just like, yeah, and I think about the stories my brother told me just like from his time, not in war, but in the military overseas, and about how traumatic things happen. He didn't get the day off to go take a nap,
right,
and rest and process that trauma. And that's why what you were saying is so important, to tend ourselves and to give ourselves that. And if we did, we wouldn't all need to go get this EMDR stuff, which is really cool.
It is really cool.
Tell me.
I wish I could remember it as a narrative better. It was like in a therapy experience, and it was all related to this same stuff we're talking about of like unlocking 13-year-old Chelsea and the wall I'd built up around my heart, and related to all that. Like I actually really struggled to articulate my memories of my life before my mom died. I have kind of like a block that I can like, through, if I meditate into it, I could actually tell you a lot about my childhood, but it's not just right there on the surface available to me. So when we were trying to like unlock some of this stuff, she did some of the practices of this. I don't really even understand it. I was just like, after it happened in the therapy session, like, what did you just do to me? Like, that was insane how I just like could access this part of myself that I would have been buried so deep to my conscious self. I could never figure out how to get there on my own. And, I'm happy we're talking about this because I've been thinking lately, I've been feeling like I could use another round of therapy in my life, and I need to connect with a good therapist, and like trying to figure out for myself what was so helpful about talking to someone else. Like what could they do for me that I couldn't do for myself, for like, maybe this is like a scarcity mindset. I don't want to spend money on therapy or spend the time, or like, I've just been pondering like, maybe I'm trying to justify it. I don't know what I'm doing. I just mulling it over, right? Yes. Like, am I going to get a therapist? I tried to get one online. It was like, it was helpful, but overall dissatisfying.
Yeah.
Virtual chat therapy was, what I expected it to be.
Yes.
And,
yes.
But I was just thinking like, I could, like, I've got a little bit of time off work coming up. I could just go to the river every day, microdose, journal, like do all the, meditate, do yoga. I could do all of those things, and I probably could figure out some of the stuff that's kind of itching at me in my consciousness right now that's like not feeling quite right? But, or I could go to therapy and that would be like the shortcut. Like that would be like the just surpass a few levels.
I love this.
Work out the real root of the problem, because I really think there is, I don't know. I'm not a trained therapist. I don't know what magic those people can do, but I know I experienced it one time and it was different than I've ever been able to figure out for myself.
Yes, exactly. And I'm so glad you brought this up, because I've been thinking about this constantly, this like spirituality to heal myself versus like therapy and mental health services. And I used to be very much like, I want to do this on my own, or like I have the strength and the wherewithal to know how to do this on my own, and I'm going to heal myself through all of these practices and meditation and, you know, all this stuff. And then I hit a point where I was like, nope, it's not just one thing, because you are a holistic person and you're going to need holistic treatments. And then I was like, I don't know enough about the brain. I can't step outside of myself and see my cycles and patterns.
That's the thing.
Yes, as well as a trained professional would. And that's because I was talking to Malcolm about this too, and he is not into therapy, you know, and it was like it's been a big change in our relationship, because I've had so much therapy since we even moved here. And yeah, that's what I would say. It's like I tell somebody these things, and they, with their like mountain of knowledge, can either give it back to me in a way I would have never thought, or connect a dot for me. Right. That I was like, whoa, I did not see that. Or they'll say it in a way where I'm triggered by the way that they're describing my issue. And I'm like, something's there. And I would have avoided that in my spiritual practice. Like, no, that's not. Right. What's up here? You know, and you're right. It would have took me like a year and a half to come to that on my own. Yeah. And then she was explaining the EMDR to me, because at this point in my life, I'm doing pre-trauma processing work. So I've done some trauma processing, which was painful and terrible. And then I stopped it. And then I just continued on with my regular spiritual practices, and then had a moment of crisis where I was like, okay, this isn't enough. I need to go back. And then she was like, well, let's skill you up here, because I can tell you're in a lot of distress and there's not much distress tolerance happening. And I was like, girl, you tell me what?
That's so brilliant.
Yeah, I was like, I am not tolerating this distress very well at all. And like, it was very symptomatic, the most symptomatic I had been in my life. And she was like, well, first off, it's a good thing. You can tell you make progress when your symptoms get worse. Symptoms are your body telling you something's wrong. Yeah. Symptoms are your body trying to heal itself. And it's like, hey, over here. Right. This is what you need to help me with.
Pick me.
Yeah.
Look at this.
And she was like, because I had also been to a doctor who wants to treat your symptom, right, by masking it. And I was like, that's not really the route I want to go. Right. Let me go see a therapist first. And I saw multiple therapists, and none of them were like, definitely get on a pharmaceutical, like try the anti-anxiety or whatever. Everybody was like, no, you want your symptoms. And you want to keep them there so that you will do the work. Right. You just want to be better able to deal with them on your own. So they skill you up. So you get like distress tolerance, interpersonal effectiveness, mindfulness, which was incredible. I was like, yes, mindfulness in like a Western mental health capacity. And then emotional regulation skills. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa, nobody taught me that. That's not something I grew up with. And so they skill you up.
That right there is why I teach preschool.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to fix that for our next generation, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but go on, sorry. I just am really passionate about teaching emotional regulation. It's like,
so important.
Why the hell have we not been doing that for 3 and 4-year-olds?
I mean, even for like anyone in grade school.
For all
I was
of
like,
us.
teenagers
like we should
need
have
this.
life. It should be like you can't get a whatever checkpoints there are on any of life. You can't get a driver's license. You can't get a marriage license. You can't get anything unless you take an emotional regulation class first.
I
don't know.
this.
That's just
I like
my
this.
pitch for saving the world.
I'm a fan. I think it would be very effective.
But we're never going to do that. So I just decided I'd get all the 3-year-olds while they're 3 and hope to send them forward with those skills.
And the parents, too.
People
That's
are
why I love
open
that
to
conscious
information
discipline
at that
class.
moment in their lives,
Ooh,
whether they're
yeah.
3 or the parent of a 3-year-old.
Yes.
Or like actually catching people when they're pregnant is like one of the... You're like so ready to like tell me how to do it, please. You know, like I'm ready to learn. It's the catalyst, like you were talking about, right? You're like open to some information at that moment, and this is really why I chose to do what I do.
And letting something new in, something new is happening to you. So you're like, yes, give me all the information.
Yeah,
we read like 10 books.
That's probably
I
when
was
people
pregnant.
read the most books.
Yeah, yeah. Or you hope so. You know?
Do really hope so.
Maybe if my mom had access to the books, I wouldn't be in emotional regulation skills class at 32.
We gotta normalize having these books available, or it's just stuff we all talk about on podcasts all the time.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so
I
true.
took this away. You were saying you've been doing pre-prep for your
for the
processing,
trauma processing,
and emotional regulation is one of the skills.
Yes. And this was the first time I had ever been through a therapy that even suggested a skills building. And I was like, whoa, this is new, you know, and I didn't know what to expect, but it's been super effective. And then when you get to the trauma processing, my therapist was telling me how the EMDR works. This concludes the first part of a 2-part episode. You can catch the continuation of Sam and Chelsea's conversation next Friday at 3 p.m. on the air at KXCJLP 105.7 and 101.3 FM, or streaming on all podcast platforms. Be sure to follow Earth Soul Medicine on Instagram at Earth Soul Medicine Podcast and on Facebook at Earth Soul Medicine. Earth Soul Medicine is brought to you by Veil Voyager, a mystical brand based in Southern Oregon, offering intuitively crafted plant essences, psychic mediumship readings, and all things spiritual self-care, including Portal Planner, a yearly guide for spiritual self-care covering topics such as crystal wisdom, plant spirit healing, and ancient rituals, all aligned with the cycles of the moon. Find out more at www.veilvoyager.com or on Facebook and Instagram at VEILVOYAGER. Veil Voyager. Seek and you shall find.